This episode is about bug or feature and the sometimes weird handling of source groups. A user asked me, "Hey Markus, is it possible that there is an error in the graphical user interface when calculating the annual emission rates?" He checked his project several times and could not find any fault, but too high emissions are shown in the total annual emission form for one source group. As one learns from others' mistakes, let's look what happened here. To do this, we do not use the original project but a simplified one. The project had many source groups, but two of them were essential, namely paved and unpaved roads. These source groups are already defined. The user defined a line source for the paved roads source group. We are using an emission rate of 0.5 kg per hour and call the line source paved road. Subsequently, a second line source was added for the unpaved road. The user added a source group for unpaved roads and we are using an emission rate of 1.0 kg per hour. In this example, we used the default emission modulation 1.0 throughout the year. So we should get about 4.4 tons per year for the paved roads and 8.8 tons per year for the unpaved roads. A look at the total emissions form shows the expected annual emissions of 8.8 tons for the source group unpaved roads. For the source group paved roads, we get an annual emission of 9.5 tons instead of the expected value of 4.4. Is this a bug? Checking emission loads is important and can reveal input mistakes. In order to find such input errors, I suggest to use the search and filter tool of the graphical user interface. Here we see three sources. Source 1 is the paved road with source group 1 and an emission of 0.98 kg per kilometer and hour. This is equal to the emission of 0.5 kg per hour for this source. Source 2 is the unpaved road with source group 1 and an emission rate of 0.98 kg per kilometer and hour. Stop! Source group 1 should not occur at all on the unpaved road. And finally, we see source 2 a second time, here with source group 2 and an emission rate of 1.7 kg per kilometer and hour. So what happened here? When a new line source is added, the graphical user interface copies all settings of the previous source to the new source. This is a feature, not a bug. The user added a new source group without deleting the already existing source group from the previous source. And how can we solve this? There are several options. You can edit the source rate here in the search dialog and set it to 0 for source group 1 for the unpaved road. Edit the numerical input, the color changes and use the button Save the changes. If we check the annual emission rates, we see that they are now consistent with the expected values. But this solution is not smart because the source group unpaved road is still linked to the source group paved roads. So what is a better solution? It is preferable that we enter the source dialog, then select the unpaved road, select the paved road source group, delete this source group and save the changes. If we open the search dialog now, we see only two sources as desired. Well, and back to the sources tab, we see that the annual emission rates are correct. After this episode, it should be clear. The annual emission load should be checked because input errors can happen very easily. And you can use the search and edit tool to find such errors. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Goodbye and have a great time on working with Gral.